Florida fans, I got a question for you. What's a good enough season in your eyes to bring back Billy Napier for a fourth year? Because there's already going to be a gauntlet with the arrival of Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. But then there's hell on high water on top of 2 underwhelming years in Gainesville. And that's what Billy Napier is facing. So is it already time just to pull the plug, or do you have any hope that things are going to get better? Let's go ahead and discuss. But if you are new here, welcome on into the channel, people. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. Simply because the clock has struck 0 on 2023, it does not mean I'm going from 100 to 0 with making content. I'm here every day to keep you active throughout this offseason. So if you need your daily dose of college football, might I recommend you hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts on what is a winning recipe for the Gators in 2024. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, SEC faithful, college football aficionados, and Florida fans everywhere about this channel, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking college football daily. Continue to follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, Twitter, X, Instagram. You can email me too. The link's right down there below. But that way, conversations surrounding our favorite sport never have to stop flowing. So, Billy Napier was one of the biggest risers coming out of Louisiana. And I'll be completely real with you. I thought this was a home run hire. I thought this was a move that was going to emulate a lot of what you saw during the Urban Meyer days. There were going to be some hiccups along the way, but the man was proven. He had brought his team to 2 back-to-back Sun Belt titles, and he had experience in the SEC, and he already knew the lay of the land when it came to recruiting in the Southeast region, whether it be at Clemson or whether it be at Alabama. And he's proven that he can be an efficient play caller offensively during his time when he was at Arizona State, and of course during his time with Louisiana. I thought this was a good move. But year one, Anthony Richardson's your starting quarterback. You start off really hot with the win over Utah, and then things kind of slow down and you finish 6-7. Well, this past year, you end up being a game away from bowl eligibility, and you lose down the stretch and you go 5-7. So regression sets in. Now, to be fair, there were 2 games that you probably should have won. So 6-6 should have actually been an improvement to 7-5, because if all you had to do was get a 4th down stop against Missouri and you had to make a field goal against Arkansas. You get those 2, it's done deal. You're going to a bowl game, and maybe you feel a little bit brighter about the future in Gainesville. But that doesn't happen. And I am not a person who lives always with the glass half full mentality. I know for most of you who watch these videos, you hear me talk in a positive light. And I usually want to, because I like seeing when programs are doing the right thing and moving in a positive direction. I've given a lot of credit to Lincoln Riley this offseason for him to be able to humble himself, just like Ryan Day had to do, just like Eli Drinkwitz had to do, just like Jimbo Fisher tried to do. It's enough for me to say, I'm going to give you a pass on what happened in 2023. I don't know if I can do that with Billy Napier. So far, not including the Jaden Rashada incident, which really has nothing to do with him in my eyes. You've watched as your transfer portal class was hindered. You brought in 11 to replace 22. You had a top 10 recruiting class going into this year. And while you kept DJ Lagway as your long-term answer at quarterback, you lost a ton of names who decided to go flip miss at the last second. And there's not a lot of hope right now going into next season. Plus, on top of all that, you have a gauntlet of a schedule. You have, by all means, what can only be described as the schedule from hell. And my first thought process when I saw it drop a couple weeks ago was, who did Billy Napier piss off in Birmingham to where this became a reality check for him? What did he say to Greg Sankey inside of an office that made him go, you know what? We're just going to riddle Florida with all hell. They already have a tough non-out-of-conference schedule, but let's just go ahead and throw a little bit more fuel onto the fire. They start off the season against Miami, then they play Samford, then Texas A&M, then Mississippi State, and UCF. You might be able to split the series with Texas A&M and Mississippi State. Maybe you get a win over Miami and UCF, and you're probably going to beat Samford. Then comes the daunting part. Tennessee on the road. Then you play against Kentucky, Jacksonville against Georgia. Then you go to Texas. Then you play LSU. Then you get to take on Ole Miss. By the way, even though that game's at home, Ole Miss will be rolling at the time. And of course, you're playing an undefeated Florida State team from last year. That's your schedule. Enjoy it. Seriously, what is a winning season for Billy Napier? And there have been some times where I will say, even though I am being very critical around him, he's done some good. Go back to 2022. The very end. Let's go up to Madison, Wisconsin. Anybody remember that team? The Badgers had just fired Paul Chryst. He was no longer the guy. Jim Leonard was no longer going to be considered the head coach. And Graham Mertz at this point was basically a has-been. What could have been? This was a quarterback that many people were excited to see in Wisconsin, And he did nothing. He blew it. He blew his shot. Well, at worst, you would say he is the middle tier quarterback in the SEC. He's the kicks of quarterbacks in the SEC. And at best, you would say he is a top half passer. That's because of Billy Napier. You can say that keeping Eugene Wilson, who is going to be a human highlight reel next year, is a positive for the Gators. And that's in large part due to a guy like Billy Napier selling the program. And you can say that the rushing attack, even though you did lose Trevor Etienne to a rival, is still potent enough to feel confident. There is some optimism here, but what has to happen? So there's two ways to go about it for you to see growth. Number one is that you continue to work the transfer portal in your favor. That comes with the second wave. Are you going to land a few more names that are going to be big time studs? And I'm not talking about guys like Chimere Madike out of Wisconsin, or Clay Millen, who was a was a quarterback for Colorado State, or Grayson Howard from South Carolina. Those are moves, but is there going to be a premier name that jumps into the portal and you go ahead and put enough NIL funds to say, hey, you come down here to Florida, watch what happens? Ricky Pearsall was really good. Graham Mertz was showing you something. I think that you're in a good spot here. Are you going to also continue to work the recruiting trail in your favor? You have a top 15 class going into 2025. Do you land more 5-stars? Do you land more talent to where it feels like, well, give him a little bit more time. He's doing some good. Look at the talent that is currently coming in. Now it's just about development. And what happens if also you watch as Graham Mertz builds off of last season? So his completion percentage was at an all-time high. His passing to touchdown interception ratio was at an all-time high. Say he doubles that. Say he ends up throwing for 5,000 plus yards and 35 touchdowns, and Eugene Wilson's an All-American. Is that enough for you to say there's a proof of concept here? Our schedule was just made out of hell. It was just disgusting and we never were going to succeed. Or does the win-loss record matter? Because this is where it really is going to define or make or break Billy Napier next year. If you see the constant improvements and the offense is showing you progress with its trenches, and younger players are actually turning out to be very big staples and soon household names in the SEC, then maybe if you're Scott Strickland, you're sitting there and saying, I'll give him one more year because of this schedule was always going to be hell. Or you look and see regression. You see players not eventually actually reaching their full potential. 5-stars look more like 3-stars, and more names are looking to enter the portal at some point. And the names you brought in via the portal, guys that you targeted yourself, aren't panning out. Well, at that point, it feels like the writing is on the wall. What is it for Florida fans? I'm genuinely curious, because if I went 7-5, and let's just say during that 7-5 stretch, I beat Miami, I beat Samford, I beat Texas A&M, I beat Mississippi State, I beat Kentucky, and then I beat Florida State, and I get an upset win over LSU, Georgia, Texas, or Ole Miss. Is that good enough for me? Because I'm still going to lose to Tennessee. I lose to a school like UCF, and I lose to a school like Ole Miss, but I beat Georgia in Jacksonville. Is that enough to keep me around for another year? Because we've seen it before. You remember a few years ago, 2017, if I'm not mistaken, Auburn, Gus Malzahn, supposed to be fired. I think it was the Arkansas game. Everyone was saying, man, this is the end for him. And then he goes on a run down the stretch and he beats Alabama, and then he beats Georgia. Both, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one was at home, one was on the road. And then he gets a contract extension because of the problem is that everyone was looking at Tennessee, everyone was looking at Arkansas, and they're saying these programs are in hell right now. Do we really want to be there? Is that a conversation you're having with Billy Napier? So he gets the big upset win over like a number 1 team or number 3 team in the country, but he loses to UCF. Is that enough to keep him around? I don't know. I'm genuinely curious. What do Florida fans think on this one? Because now in the new version of the SEC, things are only going to get more difficult. And if you don't think that Napier can build off of this season, whether that's production-wise, whether that's productivity in numbers, whether that's scoring opportunities, whether that's red zone efficiency, whether that's just win-loss total, if you don't think he's going to get any better, you're just holding out for literally nothing. You're just waiting for the day to drop where you actually hit the button and you're eventually going to go reset. That's all this is. But if you think that there is something there, that what is happening right now, where you are watching these younger players eventually become fixtures for your team, and you do see yourself closing games in the right time. And those games that you saw last season that you probably should have won, Missouri, Arkansas, they end up becoming wins and wins over ranked opponents. Is that enough for a 6-6 year? I'm just genuinely curious because I don't think that there is a right answer when it comes to Billy Napier next year. There's a lot of things that he has to do to fix this team, and he's done some things for the better, but he also has some question marks moving forward on top of already a schedule that nobody in their right mind would ever think of playing 5 years ago if you knew that this is what was coming. Gus Malzahn at Orlando, like, come on, man. He's going to get a Gus Malzahn special every year. It just happened, may happen to be against a team like Florida. What's enough? I'm genuinely curious. So leave a comment down below and tell me what is enough for Florida to keep Billy Napier around. I'm genuinely curious. I think 7-5 is good enough. I really do. But some people may be wrong. It's Florida for that matter. And Florida, when it's run right, top 15 job in college football. You could argue top 10 job in college football. You just got to have the right coach. Do you really believe Billy Napier is the right coach? Generally a question for you to only answer. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.